everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Exposure Scientist podcast. One thing I have often spoken of on the podcast or in presentations that I have given is the want from the industrial hygiene perspective or the exposure scientist perspective to be in a proactive stance, getting ahead of an issue, talking about the return on investment of getting ahead of an issue instead of playing catch up on that issue. I think is imperative because so much more can be done when you are ready for an event to happen. You can analyze, you can do what we do with traditional industrial hygiene rules and anticipate, recognize, evaluate, and control a potential hazard. And there has been a lot of want to do that, but again, a lot of my career has been on the reactive side, where we are coming in from a reactive stance and saying, okay, we already have an issue. What can we do to either correct that issue, understand what the impact of that issue currently is on the facility, on the occupants, or whomever, and how are we going to fix it going forward? And more oftentimes than not, it costs a lot more from the reactive standpoint to get ahead of an issue, to get an issue under control and figure out how to manage that issue going forward than it would have been to take a proactive approach to the issue. And I like to highlight those instances where I see people taking a proactive stance or a proactive approach. And recently, one organization has been doing that. I think it's a great thing that they have been doing that. So the agency or organization I would like to highlight today is the U.S. General Services Administration, or GSA. Some of you may have heard about some of the water quality regulations or rules coming out from them, or directives. And I want to highlight that. I want to bring them up because they are imperative. They are important in what they are doing to kind of take control of water quality in buildings. So to give you kind of a general um, idea of who a GSA is, GSA was founded in 1949. If you're new or are not aware of GSA, they are there to help with procurement in the federal government, purchasing and distribution of supplies to government agencies, and maintaining supplies for critical materials. Also discusses construction of government buildings and maintaining communication systems used by the federal government. They're an agency that has been established for a long time, and recently, I say recently, um, this directive came out the end of last year, and there's been more of a push on it in the early 2024, is the want or need for GSA to be committed to water quality. And there was a directive issued at the end of last year. There has been a lot of FAQs and presentations, et cetera, from GSA discussing um, water quality and getting ahead of water quality. And I want to highlight this because I think it's commendable. Many times there has been issues with, I want to say, convincing organizations that they need to have facility water management plans or understand their facility water management. But they don't see the importance of it in some instances. With the ASHRAE 188 that came out in 2015, recently ASHRAE 514 came out. ASHRAE 188 was for Legionella, Legionellosis in building water. 514 expanded that to other waterborne pathogens, chemicals that are used in water, et cetera. It's more of a comprehensive view of facility water management than has, I'll say, been stated previously in a guidance document. And the fact that GSA is recognizing um, the importance of water management is commendable. The agency is getting ahead of these issues. I think they have lots of presentations that they've given. You can go out and take a look if you talk about it to look on the internet. But some of their statements have said they're committed to maintaining water quality in their office. It's pivotal for a healthy work environment. I think that's great for them to say. Safety of federal employees to public and contractors is highest priority for them. So one thing that they're doing is they're enacting some baseline water testing in owned and leased facilities. certain owned facilities, but many of their leased facilities. So much, in fact, that they are going back and they're changing some of the leases to say you have to comply with these guidelines or this directive that we have issued to establish baseline water testing. And I think that's great. That's the proactive approach that's needed because again, one of the pivotal things about this is baseline testing. What is going to be done to understand where your systems are right now? They state in their presentations their goal is to proactively identify issues and adjust water management practice to correct conditions. They want to get ahead of this. They recognize, especially during closures from buildings and during COVID-19, that there have been issues caused by water stagnation within those buildings. So, what are some of the items? What are some of the things that are being looked at for water management within these facilities? Because I think that's important to understand. They have criteria. They have issued criteria. They have a checklist available on their website. You can easily go to that. I'll try to link it to it in the show notes of what they're looking for. They want to understand what the concentration of lead is, what the concentration of copper is. They are looking at total coliforms and highlighting E. coli. And the last, again, that's the most near and dear, I'll say, to what I have been doing and talking on is Legionella. They have a criteria for Legionella within their presentations. They discuss the increases in Legionellosis or Legionnaire's disease over the past number of years. They cite CDC information within these presentations, which I think is commendable. Now, if any of you had participated or attended at AIHA Connect this year, AIHA Connect 2024, during my talk, which from again, and I think I brought this up during the talk, my talk, if you went and searched on the app or searched there, was the only talk specifically dedicated to Legionella at the conference. I think that I'm hoping to use this GSA information to establish there's more of a proactive approach, that we need to get ahead of this. We need to have more conversations at the conferences, not less, because we have had discussions at conferences in the past with Legionella presentations, but they have diminished over the past few years. Again, mine was the only one at this year's conference that was dedicated to Legionnaire's disease or Legionella. So I want to use this opportunity as a growth at the industrial hygiene level at conferences to continue this conversation. So if you were not there, one of the discussions that I had was underreporting from CDC data on Legionnaire's disease. And within the GSA information, they discuss there's been a 9-fold increase from 2000 to 2018 and has been on the rise. And within that presentation, AIHA actually quantified the underreporting that was going on using some averages and some information. I've got information on my blog about the presentation. And just how much more Legionnaire's disease there likely is just based on underreporting, looking at weekly versus cumulative totals. So this effort by GSA is a great proactive attempt to get things done. They are taking charge. They realize that some of their facilities have had problems impacted by stagnation issues. They have on one of their presentations, they have a list of a number of 15 different federally owned facilities and 4 leased, and 6 of them, it looks like, have water stagnation issues because of site closures. So it's important to maintain that water quality. So what they're looking at is for baseline testing, they're going to require leased facilities to establish baseline Legionella testing or baseline water quality testing, and Legionella is one of those. And they're looking at federally owned facilities that are over 1,000 square feet with drinking water systems. And in their directive, you can go find it on their website. It's very easy. They discuss public water utilities or public water systems and the responsibilities and requirements of those and what goes on in building water, and discusses the potable water systems with facilities. And, it's important to understand that some of these facilities are child care centers. Some of them are healthcare centers. So there are some that are, I'll say, not that may be at a higher risk. So if you look at the healthcare center, you know that based on the data, there is an increased chance of getting an infection of Legionella and an outcome of Legionnaire's disease if you're already hospitalized. So depending on the type of facility, it may be even a higher risk as compared to other facilities. So it's important to understand that there's a lot that is going into this effort by GSA to increase the proactive approach addressing water systems. And I think, I mean, I think it's a great effort from what they're doing. You know, within some fact sheets and FAQs and everything, they're referencing ASHRAE standards 188, 514. They're talking about guideline 12, talking about CDC Legionella toolkit. There's a lot of good information here, and I think it's information that other facility owners should consider um, when you're doing this. And when you're saying, well, does my facility need testing? Does it need to have this baseline kind of understanding? And the answer is yes. All facilities need this kind of testing because, again, as I discussed before, your water quality is only as good as to what comes into the meter. You know, the public water utility will say, well, we give enough to get you to the meter, and after that, we don't have anything to do with the water. The water within your facility is under your control, and the safety of it is under your control. The exposure to the individuals within your facilities under your control. So this proactive approach by them is great. Even on their FAQs, you know, there's specific ways. Listen, you know, if you have a positive, you know, there are things that have to be done. There have to be, if there are any, I'll say, exceedances of any of their thresholds, and they have thresholds that are established for lead, copper, total coliforms, and Legionella. There have to be timely notifications to those facilities so they can get ahead and address the water quality issues. That's all laid out from GSA. It's a I think, well thought out document for what has to go on. Now, the important part here, I'll say the important part, and it's important for us to remember as industrial hygienists, is that we have the expertise here. We are the ones who, with indoor environmental quality expertise, who can understand building water systems or building systems and how they impact those of the occupants of the facility. Um, it talks about what are the requirements for people who are doing this testing. There are things that, you know, they mentioned within the document itself: industrial hygiene, an industrial hygienist, somebody who has experience, you know, a certain minimum number of years. Talking about engineering consulting firms. One of the things it says a preferential certification, a CIH. So it's important to recognize again that we are in this conversation, and many people may not remember. I don't think it's included in the version 2, but the version 1 document from CDC, the Legionella Toolkit, it highlighted and talked about who is part of the water management team. And it said certified industrial hygienists. We continue to be part of the conversation for Legionella and water management because we have the knowledge and expertise within that area. So it's important to highlight that we as CIHs know how to address these issues, know how to sample, know how to understand where deficiencies are, reporting the results, understand the importance of reporting the results, and having remediation or addressing these problems. And again, one thing we've done at AIHA is that we have a technical framework for Legionella when you're a technician in the field, when you're a responder professional or a program professional. We know how to address these problems. And I think GSA recognizes that we know how to address the problems here and can do so professionally. Again, is a great effort by GSA. Now, I think there are some areas, some room for improvement within the GSA guidelines. They talked about areas that are going to be sampled, and it very much focuses on outlets primarily designed for human consumption. I think that may be missing a few things. Now, if you're talking about total coliforms or Lead and copper, I think that's the ingestion route is going to be the primary route that you're going to be concerned with. They mentioned areas where people typically drink water, water filling stations, kitchen sinks, drinking fountains, etc. Now, I think it's again important to recognize that the main route of exposure to Legionella is through aerosolization of water inhalation of that aerosolized water droplet containing Legionella. So it says areas that are not required for testing. It does not include bathroom sinks, doesn't include water lines to tenant-owned equipment, and it gives the example of refrigerator. I've seen it. Detections of Legionella in refrigerator water lines. I know we've seen them in bathroom sinks. They have aerators typically on those. Now there's some discussion of removal of those aerators in those types of sinks, but there's still exposure points. And I think that's important to remember that there is, I think, room to grow here on what is necessary for sampling. And is it possible that some may be missed? It is possible that there are some areas that may not get the attention that they deserve. I think it's interesting. One other area of the directive is some FAQs. It talks about if it's a leased facility, let's just say it's a leased office in a larger office building, some areas to be addressed are areas that are common areas to guests who make your customers who may come into the building. And how to maybe sample those areas as well. There are minimum numbers of samples that are to be collected, or typical numbers of samples to be collected. And I think that's important as well, is that it's important to remember, and within your documents, it says that there's not a one size fits all, that each facility is unique and different. And I think that's important to remember because there may be a large number of potential exposure points within one building versus another building who may only have one bathroom, one kitchen. So it may not be possible to get all the samples that they would like to see in there. So I think that's important to also recognize is, with anything else, there's not a one size fits all model. Each scenario is different and unique, and you have to look at the uniqueness in that scenario and how it fits within the sampling paradigm. So another thing that's called for in the directive that I think is interesting, we'll see how this has to play out, is discussion of federally owned facilities and talking about um, other occupancy issues is, maintaining or a guideline, or how are you going to maintain and restore water quality? Let's just say something happens um, that has issues, that causes issues with the facility. How are you going to do that? There's an implementation discussion in buildings over 50,000 square feet with one or more booster pumps, and buildings over 6 stories in height. So there's other nuances to the regulation. I highly, as I say, regulation to the directive. I think it is useful for you to review that information, review the FAQs, information that's put out for the guideline. But it's a great step forward by GSA recognizing this, thinking about all these types of facilities. It may even be facilities if they're leased facilities. It may even be where a lease facility who has never even thought of testing for Legionella gets this notification from GSA. It says, maybe I should do this for my entire facility. They may not even heard about the problem. You know, I don't think that there has been a great effort by organizations focusing on facilities and building owners to get the word out about the requirements, or get the word out about the hazards that exist from waterborne pathogens and exposure to those within the facilities. And this may be an initiating event for a number of different building owners across the United States, and say, well, if GSA is concerned about it for their leased office area or their leased space, maybe this is something I should do building wide. And if that is the case, I think that's great because then those people will be hungry for more information. And again, as industrial hygienists, we can step in and give them the information they need, feed their hunger, give them the direction and guidance to be proactive instead of reactive. Because again, the discussion from my presentation at AIHA and discussion from CDC, the Legionella numbers are going to go up. There was a small dip during COVID. There are lots of caveats given by CDC, talked about there was underreporting or lack of reporting for certain states, and it coincided with COVID-19. Legionella cases are continuing to rise and are going to do so. And we see it in the data. And it's important that we are getting ahead of this. This is just GSA effort is just one part in that. I think it's good for us as industrial hygienists to use this. It may be these owners and operators of buildings see this requirement from GSA and say, maybe I need to test my building. Maybe this is an approach to go talk to those management companies or owners and operators and say, look, listen, GSA is doing it at this facility. They're concerned. Do you have any concerns that I can answer questions to help you out with it, help address and help them understand? I think we need to take that lead. I think this is a great act by GSA. I think there is some room for improvement. I think that this baseline testing is going to help answer some questions. I think it's going to create others. And I think we as industrial hygienists should be there to help answer those questions, to help guide, especially those of us with experience in this area, help guide those individuals on where we should go. Again, it's a great effort by GSA. It's awesome to see. It's great to see it implemented. So many presentations and discussions on it from GSA of why it's necessary. And I think this is a big step forward. I'm hoping others are going to take big steps as well. I appreciate you joining us on today's episode of the Exposure Scientist podcast. Hopefully, I gave you some information that's going to create some discussions. Hopefully, we'll have some more information on some additional GSA details and topics. But this is a great start. This is a great place to be as far as expanding where we are from a management side of water quality facilities. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.